You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Alongside Mike Chappell and Matt Adams, I'm Dave Griffiths. Glad to have you along as we are just about halfway through training camp in Westfield. Chap, it seems like we just got out there to Grand Park, already halfway done. The pads are on, and certainly the intensity is quite evident out there. We'll get to a lot over this next hour. We've got Hall of Fame to cover. We've got players having turns for the worse, very much so. We've got the owner talking. We've got Hard Knocks developments. But we will start with just a general overview of camp so far, Mike. And you've been out there for a couple days. I've been out there for a couple days. We've heard from Jim Irsay. We've seen the players. Your impressions from the first half here of training camp at Westfield as the Colts are once again gathered together as a new season is about to begin.
Well, just how quickly it goes. I mean, today was practice 5, I think. Mm-hmm. Well, they only practiced 12 times.
Right.
So they practice on Friday and Sunday, I believe it is.
Friday, Sunday, and Monday, I think I checked the schedule.
And then they're halfway. And before you know it, you'll be in Denver. Then before you know it, the Cardinals and Marvin Jr. will be here.
Ooh.
Which is going to be an absolute circus.
I'll bet Marvin Sr. will be here, too.
Because I'll bet Marvin Sr.'s here.
That will make it the circus.
And because there was a lot of talk from the owner about how wouldn't it be nice if Marvin Jr. were here.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the whole thing is how quickly it goes. And before you know it, it's going to be September 8th and Houston and C.J. Stroud and all that. So it's really cool how quickly they do go. Again, I've done this 41 years in training camps, and they just fly by because you get into a routine and you hope nothing happens. And we've already had a couple of things happen, one with the owner and one with Samson Ebukam. So you deal with it and move on.
You bring up Ebukam, so we might as well get into that. It was a position that the Colts were probably the deepest at of the entire roster. If there's one position where, I have to lose somebody, then that would be, even though they're really good players, you don't want to lose any of them. But it seems like Samson Ebukam out for the season, torn Achilles is the word. Well, he hasn't been put on IR yet, which is what we've been talking about. I need to check on that.
That's strange.
Yeah, it is strange that within a couple of days he hasn't gone on IR. I don't know what they're waiting for.
You can't. We were talking in the press room. You can't come back from an Achilles for the playoffs, can you?
Maybe Aaron Rodgers could with all of his knowledge that we don't have.
But I remember Eric Fisher talked about it took him. What didn't come back to him was that quick twitch. Well, that's what Ebukam is. He's all quick twitch, so I think it's just something they just haven't gotten around to it. It's
kind of the same reason that Dio was kind of limited for his first couple seasons because, he came back, he could move, but he wasn't able to kind of regain that college form until a little bit later.
Yep, there was some aspects of Dio improving in his first couple years and definitely getting healthier, for sure. He definitely looked more like his Hurricane Dio days at Vanderbilt. When you watched SEC, if for some reason you were watching Vanderbilt football, and you had
to be an alum.
Exactly. And you were watching, you're like, who's this one guy who's good on their team? And it was Dio.
You still watch Syracuse?
From time to time. Yeah, we're going to watch him this year. We got Fran Brown coming over from Georgia. Let's go. We got Kyle McCord at quarterback who was throwing balls to Marvin Harrison Jr. last year at Ohio State. Come on now. What do you mean, do you still watch Syracuse? Get out of here, chap. But anyway.
Are you a season ticket holder?
I mean, I would love to be, but
would you be
I'm busy here.
If you were in town? Would you be a season ticket holder?
Probably not, to be perfectly honest.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you have a limit to your loyalty.
Exactly. Not a whole season. Not a whole season. I'd go to a game or two, maybe 3, but certainly not a whole season. Anyway, back to Samson Ebukam. Probably, I would venture to say, an underrated player on the defensive line, chap, because you look at the line, and we talk about Quiddy. We talk about DeForest, obviously. Grover gets some attention as a great run stopper. Samson's the other one who starts, and he had the second most snaps out of anybody on the defense last year. He was in there all the time. They relied on him to stop the run. They relied on him to rush the passer. He had 9.5 sacks. He had the most on the team. That was the best at getting at the quarterback in the Indianapolis era. As a team.
51 sacks. I mean,
51.
There were times the pass rush went away, but
right. DeForest,
51 sacks.
Yeah, and DeForest talked about that.
Right.
Like, you want to be more consistent, getting pressure all the time and in the fourth quarter. But you have more numbers than any team in the Indianapolis era ever, and he was the best one out of all of them. So it was obviously a great free agent acquisition a year ago by Chris Ballard in the front office. He delivered exactly what you wanted him to deliver.
One of your better free agent pickups, probably.
I would venture to
Danico
say. He had
Audrey,
9.5
Jamal
sacks,
Sherrod.
yeah. A lot of those defensive ends are pretty good.
They've not drafted defensive ends very well. They
found some.
They adjusted Houston for a year, Ngakoue for a year.
Yep, good point. So now where does this leave the defensive line? Like, who's going to step in? First of all, we're going to see more Laiatu Latu early. He's not going to be sliding into a starting role. Don't get me wrong when I say this, but we are going to see more of him early on in the season than we would have without this injury, unquestionably. So he's got to be ready day one to have a few more snaps than you would imagine he would have had, Chap.
I was watching today in the 11-11 sessions. There were 4 or 5 of them. And the first 4, it was Quiddy and Latu, and then it was Quiddy and Tyquan Lewis. And then they flipped again. So they really split it. I still think, remember, we go back to high school, you earn your letter by how many times you started. Well, he's not going to earn a letter for starting,
right? But
he will be the guy that when it's 3rd and long, 2nd long, 4th quarter, he's going to be out there in that pass rush package, and that's what they thought all along. But I do think he'll be on the field a little more, simply because they like. And we talked to Gus Bradley today. You know, they want 8 guys on that line that they know that if one of these guys has to play, Tyquan Lewis, what a quality, valuable player he is, because he can play everywhere. So Latu will play. I think he plays a little bit more because of this.
The thing is, they still have 8. Like, they still really do. On the inside, it's Grover and Buck, and then behind them, it's Taven Bryan and Raekwon Davis, who has not practiced yet because of his blood pressure issue, whatever that might be. And then on the outside, it's Kwity Paye and, let's say, Tyquan Lewis, Dayo Odengbo, and Laiatu Latu. Like I said, we talked about this in the offseason, how deep this defensive line room is. That doesn't include Jannard Avery, who played a decent amount last year from time to time on the defensive line as well, who is still in camp this year and is playing with the second team here and there.
And you've got Addy, the rookie from last year. I'll let you pronounce, because I'll mispronounce
Adetamoa Adebare.
See, there you go.
And then Eric Johnson, the rookie from 2 or 3 years ago.
So it's really... It is, if you want to argue offensive line, defensive line, probably defensive line's a little deeper with top to bottom quality. The only issue is you've lost a starter on day 3 or whatever. You just, because there's going to be, you hate to say it, but there's going to be more injuries. There just are. You just hate to lose a guy for the season so early in the process.
Some other injuries, Titus Leo has not really been described what his injury was, but he had a knee injury.
I was told that it's not as serious as they thought.
So the accounts I saw was that he was carted off. Which,
right, and whenever there's a cart, it's not a good thing. But I was told after that it better than they anticipated. Read into that what you will.
Okay. Dayo Odengbo's also missed some time with a calf injury. I mentioned Raekwon Davis.
He went down the same day that Samson went down.
He did. So that was boom. That was rough for the defensive line on that day. Amir Speed has missed some time. Chris Layman's with an ankle injury as well. And to fill a little bit of room, the team did sign Levi Bell, a Texas State defensive end who's been on the Seahawks practice squad before, played a little USFL action in 2023. So that's kind of the early injury update. It could be worse, but it certainly could be a whole lot better, too. You never want to see a guy go out for the season, and the Colts will have to figure out a way to go forward without their leading sack man, Samson Ebukam, from 1 year ago. Jim Irsay made his way out to training camp yet again, as he always does, makes a point of it. There was probably some question whether he would be able to do it this year, and it was his first public appearance since the Pittsburgh game probably last year, before everything went down after that. And if you're a listener to this podcast, you know what I mean by I say everything went down after that. Chap, you actually got the chance to be on the phone with Jim Irsay the night before, I believe, or a day or two before.
It was the night before.
Okay. He showed up to camp. So Chap knew he was coming and got us all ready. Made sure we had pole position there for.
I should get some
interview.
kind of salary from that, from being the front guy.
Seriously, you certainly should. Yeah, they had you. You had your own throne up there by Jim's throne himself. So, what about your conversation? Because yours with him went a significant amount longer than all of us. We hit him for, I don't know, 10 minutes there or less than that. But you got him to sit down for a while. Plenty of topics to discuss. Probably you got 2 questions in, and he went 45 minutes. But your thoughts on the Colts owner at this time of the year now?
Yeah, the whole thing. I reached out to him to talk about Dwight Freeney in the Hall of Fame, which we'll get to, and we eventually did talk about that. But the first 20, 30 minutes were just him giving me an update of what he's been through health-wise, and it's a lot. It's a lot. He's had significant surgery on, however you want to do it, left leg, quad, rear end, and from that he got some kind of a hematoma that was significant. He's not gotten his mobility back. He's still, like when we saw him, he was in a golf cart, but he didn't walk to the golf cart. And when he goes, presents Dwight Freeney for induction, he'll be in a wheelchair, which shows you how he doesn't have mobility, because he doesn't want to be in a wheelchair.
No,
at all.
0% chance he wants to be
I was stuck in one for 7 days when I had a meniscus injury recently, and you don't like it because you can't do anything. But he hopes he's on the road back. I thought when he talked to us, he looked like he'd lost some weight, but there was a firmness, a strength in his voice that in my mind had been missing when I talked to him. So you just wish the best for him. Again, I say up front, he's a good friend. I've known him since the team moved here, but you still have to separate that somehow from doing your job, and he's a team leader. But he's just such a genuine person with demons. He has issues, and you just hope he comes to terms with them. And right now gets his rehab, because when I talked to him, he just got out of the pool, so he's just done his water therapy. But he just said, he wants to get back to where he can play golf and all that, which may be down the road a bit. He told me 4 or 5 months, I think it was, before he can be up and around. So it was just good to lay eyes on someone who's been through a very difficult, 7 or 8 months of whatever you want to say he's been through.
I would say, I'll echo your sentiment that he had the same voice, the same strong voice that I was used to from past years. And from what we had heard from Twitter, from his posts before, and seen of his posts before, like with gravelly, more lighter voice, I wasn't sure what to expect when we saw him coming up. He looked very much like the same old Jim Irsay, just not standing up to talk to us. He was just sitting on a golf cart, looked the same, sounded the same, still sounded like he knew what we was talking about when it came to football. Like, he didn't seem like he was obviously losing mental facilities at all. So I was, from all of those signs, I was relatively encouraged with his look and his demeanor. And he was asked about multiple things, plenty about Anthony Richardson. He's obviously very excited about seeing him in action. He said he called Ryan Kelly a priority, even though it appears like his general manager has kind of gone the opposite direction.
I would put more veracity in the GM than the owner on this.
I would as well. Like, you could say, hey, it's a priority to have a Pro Bowl center, but you can say, you let Ryan Kelly go, like, oh, we think we have a guy who's coming up who has a Pro Bowl future.
We just drafted his replacement.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I don't have to go too much into Ryan Kelly.
One thing that I did mention, I asked him on the phone, was, it seems like you're getting close to being back to being the full-time owner of the team. And he said, I've never really been gone. He said, any significant decision I've been involved with. But I do think it's fair to say that during early parts of the year, he wasn't quite as day-to-day hands-on, simply because he was dealing with surgeries, which he said he was in the hospital for a long time. And then he was bedridden for, he said, like 3 months. And that just, it limits, yes, you can do your work over the phone in Zoom, but I think he's close to being back. And I'm sure his daughters handled a lot of that stuff, owners' meetings and all that. But I think he's getting back to being closer to where he really feels like, and he can be the full hands-on owner of the team.
Good to hear. Well, as we tape this podcast, it is a Wednesday afternoon. We are 1 day away, gentlemen, from kickoff to the NFL preseason. How excited are you?
Preseason football.
Woo, buddy.
Catch it.
First look at the new kickoff rule as the Texans and Bears will take on one another in the Hall of Fame game. And Matt, we were saying earlier, that's like the one thing you can actually be eager to see. What's going to go on here? How are teams going to handle this?
Yeah, that's the big question. I mean, are we going to see a lot of like squib kicks that they force guys to try to get them off the bounce? Or are they going to just go ahead and try to kick it deep? But if you do that, there's not a penalty, but you give better starting position to the other team when you do that. So I'm going to be really intrigued to kind of see how that plays out. Is it the most exciting thing in the world? No, but it is something different, and it is something that gives some of these preseason games something interesting to watch, because we know for the Bears, Caleb Williams is not going to play. So if you're hoping
they've already ruled him out, haven't they?
They've already ruled him out. Most of the starters for the Bears we know will not play, Caleb Williams included. So if you're wanting to see the brand new quarterback, even if he came in and did 3 handoffs and then went to the bench, which a lot of times, like Andrew Luck's rookie year did that, 3 handoffs to the bench in like their last game of the preseason, and that was fine. At least you got to see the guy. So they're not going to see Caleb Williams. I haven't heard yet from the Texans. They're kind of a wait and see, but it's Wednesday, so they know exactly what they're doing. They're just not saying. If Stroud comes out, wouldn't be surprised if it's just 3 handoffs and a punt or something.
And then you wonder
lines.
why.
And then why? Exactly.
I mean, well, you want to get the running back hit, you want to get the quarterback, but if you're handing off, then what did that prove? What benefit did you get on the kickoff thing? I think what's going to be interesting is which teams can get a grip on it earliest.
Yes.
And those are the ones that will have an advantage. And you'll see the teams. I think it'll be obvious which teams really did their homework, really knows what to do, because this is a thing, again, if you really know what you're doing and you can find the little wrinkles at work, it's going to give you an advantage.
Yeah. We were watching the Colts were doing some of that today. And they were really doing more kick coverage, but the return group, they just seemed awkward with the ball. There were a couple times where the ball was bouncing. It didn't seem like they knew what the rules were. Like, should we jump on it here? It bounced into the end zone, can I down it? So there needs to be some crystal clear understanding of the rule for the players. We don't fully understand it, because I honestly, to be fully honest, haven't gotten into all the nitty gritty of the rules yet. But for the players, they better know by game one everything that needs to happen.
And that's why they have special teams meetings.
Exactly.
By the time the season gets here again, they'll know. But again, it's one thing to know it, and it's another thing when it's the season opener and it's kicked to you. And are you, like you said, can you down it? Can you let go in the end zone? What do you do? That's when you really need to know. And again, the teams that really get a grip on it will have an advantage.
The main event of the weekend, however, will be the enshrinement ceremony for the class of 2024. That includes Syracuse edge rusher Dwight Freeney, who also spent a little bit of time here in Indianapolis.
I don't think he's a season ticket holder either.
He probably isn't a season ticket holder. He's playing too much golf on Saturdays during the fall, wherever he might be.
Florida with Michael Jordan.
Exactly. Joining Devin Hester, Julius Peppers, Patrick Willis, Andre Johnson, Randy Gradishar, and Steve McMichael in this Hall of Fame class. So a good long time coming for Dwight. Not too long, though. He got in exactly. Got in relatively quickly, unlike some other Colts players. Was it 3 tries for Marvin? I forget. Do you remember?
Which still baffles me and irritates me.
Yeah.
An all-decade, anniversary team, and third time.
But that brings kind of Dwight into a national light. He is very much loved on a national scale, where here in Indy, it's not like he's not loved. He certainly is loved here, but here there's the debate who is better, Dwight or Bob, Robert Mathis. And that was a legitimate discussion that can be had. And, who is more valuable, Reggie Wayne or Dwight Freeney? You could really think about this significantly here in town, but nationally, for him to get into the Hall of Fame in just his second try, Chap, I mean, you're in the room, so you understand the discussions more than us, but it's obvious that outside of Indianapolis, Dwight Freeney is an incredibly highly respected player.
I was surprised. I really was, that the national perception of Dwight, like you said, locally, he's a great player, really a great. And we thought, a Hall of Fame level player, but nationally, he would have gotten in last year had it not been for DeMarcus Ware. And so to think that he gets in second time, Reggie Wayne's been waiting, is it 6 years now, 7 years? And at the risk of irritating the Freeney camp, I argue that Reggie's got a better Hall of Fame resume than Dwight does. I just do. Now you're talking pass rush against receiver, but nationally they really put Freeney up there. They really did. And we talked in my research, I talked to Joe Thomas, the Cleveland Browns all-world left tackle. He said, toughest pass rusher I faced in my 11 years was Dwight Freeney. He said DeMarcus Ware was close, but he said it was Freeney. And he even disparaged Julius Peppers a little bit, because of how different of a player they are. But everybody that we talked to is Freeney. And good for Dwight. It's really kind of a cool thing to see. Again, I wish Reggie would get there, and maybe this next year, although then you've got Adam Vinatieri. Right. But for Freeney, it's just a great accomplishment, a guy who was too short to play the position. 6'1", maybe, 260, 265, maybe. And to be the force that he was, and again, it's just the positions. I still go back to a story I did when I was at the local paper, and I talked to Tariq Glenn, who was a vastly underrated left tackle, and Freeney. And I said, Tariq, you can play 60 plays and do 57 of them 100% and botch 3 plays, and you're terrible. And Dwight can stand there for 57 plays, do nothing, and then get 3 sacks, and he's all pro. It's not fair, but that's the way the NFL is. And I'm not saying Dwight stood there for 57 plays, but he still didn't have the total game that some players do. He was okay against the run, but it was secondary to chasing the quarterback. But I think Dwight going in again with Peppers was number 2 that draft, and Dwight was number 11. It just shows you the value of pass rushers. And nationally, we, meaning the selectors, we chose Freeney over Jared Allen, who's got 150-some sacks, and Dwight's got 125. So good for Dwight. It'll be a great time. I'll be there, and I know Chris Widlick from our group will be there. And what we like are the enshrinement is Saturday, and it starts at noon, and Dwight leads us off. So for us, get our work done. Maybe about 2:00 when the fifth guy's doing his speech, I can be done.
Yes.
So but it's always a great weekend, and hopefully I'll get a chance to hook up with Edgerrin and Marvin, and I'm not sure Peyton will be back from Paris. I don't know how that's going to work, but so many of the Colts, like Reggie had a great quote. He said it's great to have a reunion at that time of year. He said it's be a bunch of old winos getting together and swapping stories. So, Dallas Clark will be there. It's really kind of cool. Bill Polian will be there. He just says like it's a class reunion. So good for Dwight. Looking forward to it.
I think one thing that makes Dwight stand out to me, to just understand why he was so beloved on a national scale, I think that I'll give you 2 reasons. One of them you touched on, which was he was different. Like, he was 6'1", 265. He very much changed the way that NFL evaluators view that position. Like, you didn't have to be 6'5", 280 pounds. You didn't have to be Dan Wilkinson anymore.
Well, Julius Peppers that year again goes number 2. He's 6'7",
exactly.
280.
Yeah,
huge guy.
He was very much in the vein of the prototypical NFL defensive end at that point. He's Richard Dent. He's massive, but Dwight Freeney was. You did not have defensive ends that size in the 80s and 90s NFL, at least not good ones.
And was that a case that he was a perfect fit for Dungy's defense?
Yes.
Absolutely.
I believe it was. He was a perfect fit for Dungy. He was the perfect fit for that turf out there at the old RCA Dome.
With an offense that's going to score points, and in the fourth quarter, you turn the pass rush
and
loose.
Just go, and just stink and go. So that's part of it. I think he changed the game in that aspect, and he did something with that spin move that was just iconic. It was an iconic move.
Everybody you talk to, that's what they bring up.
Yep. That you could put on the tape and see it over and over again. And it's all flashy and dashy, and you love to see it. So that I think those are 2 things that make him, that elevate him in the mind of voters.
Yeah, even in broadcasts, when you watch and a guy puts a spin from the defensive line, they call it the Freeney spin. So not many people can claim a signature move out there. Freeney's
Simone
got
Biles,
one.
maybe, but
Exactly.
but I talked to Michael Strahan, and who he's like third or fourth on the list of sacks. He said, I always tried to steal moves, whether it was Reggie White or Bruce Smith or somebody. He said, I tried to do Freeney's spin move, and I couldn't do it. So and what's funny is Dwight will talk about it, is he got that when he was in high school or before, when they were messing with basketball, the and one mixed tape or whatever, where it's street ball, where they don't call traveling. So he said his whole thing was that he wanted to make the other guy look foolish. And he did that more than once, so good for him. And then on top of that, the Colts were smart enough to not mess with it. Mm-hmm. John Turling said, hey, if it works for you and you get the quarterback, do it.
Go ahead. And so awesome for Colts fans to get another one of their favorites enshrined in Canton. And that'll be this coming weekend. And like you said, first to come out of the gate, so that'll be fun. And you can tune in right away and hear Dwight's thoughts about joining the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
And Chris will cover it really well, so we'll have it covered. We get a chance to talk to Dwight on Friday at 2:30 or whatever. So it'll be fun catching up, and whether I'm posting stuff online or whether Chris has stuff for TV section, we'll have it covered.
Yep, Fox59.com, CBS4Indy.com. Tune in Friday night to Fox 59 Sports Overtime at 10:35 if you're in Central Indiana. We'll be sure to have plenty of their coverage from Canton, Ohio. Let's return to Westfield. And a couple things that we've seen from training camp so far. A very physical Michael Pittman. Not that is news, but again, it just happens a couple different days in a row that he's chirping and chipping and getting in a little scuffle here and there. One of them was with Jalen Jones, was pretty close to a fight. EJ Speed was a little bit more muted, but in 2 different days in pretty quick succession, there was Pittman out there making his presence be felt, chap. Not that this should be a surprise, but nevertheless, it has become somewhat of a consistent phenomenon at Colts camp.
Yeah, whenever there's pushing and shoving in a pile, you always say, well,
where's Pitt?
Pitt's got to be in there. You're not sure who his the counterpart is, but that's him. He is one of the neatest guys I've been around, personality-wise. He's just so open. And you talk to him, and when we've talked to him, he's just very, very low-key, down-to-earth, open. He's a very honest guy, but there's not that aggressive nature in him. And when he gets on the field, he just flips the switch. Maybe he got that from his dad. Probably did. Super Bowl running back with Tampa, I think it was.
Yes, correct.
So, but he just, that's what he brings. And most of the time, these fights they're just pushing. The one, like you said, the one with Jalen Jones, there were some hands thrown. More from Jalen, I think. Well, there was a game we got several years ago when Pitt got thrown out. Was it New England?
New England?
Yeah. And I went back and looked, and I think he got caught up in it because he retaliated, and you always catch the second guy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But you like the edge. You like the toughness. And again, the Colts showed their commitment, I guess, or investment in him when they gave him the extension. So, we've talked, is he a top 10 receiver? Probably not. Is he top 15 in that group? Mm-hmm. So I think he's a really good guy for that room. I think it's so important to a really young receiver room to have a guy who, even if he's not a vocal leader, I think Pitt is in the room. But I go back to when, T.Y. got here and he had Reggie. I mean, what a guy to learn from. And I wish when Dante Moncrief got here that he had a voice. And at the time, it was a young T.Y., and that's really not what T.Y. was at the time. But I really think that Pitt can, along with giving you 100 catches and, 1,100 yards, and they need to get the touchdowns up and the yards per catch. But what he can, at the very worst, do the way I do, practice the way I do, when you've got such a young group, that's a huge benefit for these guys.
I'll say this about the receivers. So far, Josh Downs has been the most productive.
He's been the best guy
out of all of them in camp. And I think it's not even really significantly close. Pittman, there have been times in the past where, every ball's going to Pittman.
Not anymore.
It just seems no, it is not true. So So I think that's something that, Matt, we were talking about this a little bit last week. I might have to amend the statement that I made last week after seeing a couple weeks of camp that, Pittman's going to have 100 catches, and then after that, I don't know if anyone else is going to have 70. I think Josh Downs could very easily eclipse that because I think he had about 65, 68
like 68 last year, whatever it was.
So I would not be surprised if indeed that he is option 1A just based on what we've seen in camp so far.
If his increase, then Pitts is going to come down a little bit.
Yes, I would think so.
Because Mitchell and Pierce are going to get some, and this is going to be. Can we call it a run-heavy team?
Exactly. There's only so many balls.
Right.
There's only so many plays.
There's only 60 plays a game. So it's going to be really interesting. But again, I think Josh Downs has been the guy. Every time they go 11 on 11 and you check it's Downs, and okay, here's Pitt, and then it's Downs. Haven't seen a lot of Mitchell as we did in the off-season work. He had it's really kind of funny when Irsay's talking. He had a great catch in the end zone. Helmet comes off when he's over by the crowd, just imploring him to go longer. And here's the owner just talking. But,
like nothing's going on.
But that was one-on-one work.
It was, yes.
But I've always had criticisms of the receiver group going into a season. I feel pretty good because right now Ashton Doolin is your 5, and he's not pushing 4.
No.
The top 4 I really like.
Yeah. With Mitchell. He's made some nice plays in one-on-one, but that's what receivers are supposed to do.
You should. You should beat the guy.
That's one-on-one. So my to be determined, I think, is completely a good grade for Adonai Mitchell's first camp. Today, as we tape this podcast on Wednesday, July 31st, Alec Pierce had a pretty good day. Out of all the receivers, he might have had the best day from all of them. Made a couple nice long plays. One in particular, I think, was a 45-yard touchdown that I believe Joe Flacco threw that ball.
I think that sounds right from what I read.
Yeah, and he made a really nice adjustment on it. Like he was looking over one shoulder and then came back over the other shoulder and made the catch. So really good play by Pierce, who very much needs to have a big year to have a significant future here in Indianapolis.
We talked to Reggie 4 or 5 days ago, and I asked him about Pierce, and he said, I want to see how he responds to competition. Reggie's always brutally honest. He really is. Where he said, he said Pierce was given the number 3 spot when he was a rookie, and he was given the number 2 spot last year because just of the makeup.
And no one else is there.
Right, and now he's going to be pushed by Mitchell. So it's really curious to see. This is a big year for Pierce. Again, will he emerge or has his quiet first 2 years been a reflection of the quarterbacks and the offense, and now he's got a chance to sprout? I don't know. Also, since I brought up Reggie and his brutally honest, we asked him how, what's next for Pitt. You remember Pittman talked about going to that second tier, to being in that second tier group, and then Reggie said, well, we're working on him being a captain. He said, we know you can ball, we know you can play, but, sort of why aren't you a captain? Mm-hmm. He said, I've never seen a guy making $25 million who's not a captain.
Not wrong.
Well, but the problem is, though, you've got your offensive captains have been Kelly, Quentin, and then Richardson last year,
right,
which was sort of surprising. Mm. But I just have never gotten the impression that Pitt is the kind of guy that has, I don't know, outward leadership qualities. Some guys are, some guys aren't.
I would say the same thing about Quentin, but I think he's probably more vocal with the team than he is with us.
They see a different side than we do.
Exactly. So that's why I understand why he's a captain, because behind closed doors he's a different person.
But then Reggie did say that if I'm in a street fight, I want Pitt on my side. Mm-hmm. Which we were joking, which guys on the Colts team would you want to be in an alley with? And it was Pitt and
Zaire
and E.J. Speed and all this.
Maybe.
And then I watched the U.S. women's rugby team do the impossible and win that bronze.
That was incredible.
I would take any of those girls into a street fight with me, and I'd say...
And I'd stand back.
I'd let them throw fists.
Yeah.
But it's really, again, the physicality is what you like, and that's what Pitt brings. It's what Pierce brings. That's why he was on the field. Mm-hmm. Most of any receiver last year, because as a run blocker, he's the best they've got. So this is a very, very interesting group. I want to write in the next day or two about Reggie's assessment of it. So, again, I'm as upbeat on this group as I've been since probably the early Luck days.
And there's probably pretty defined roles for the top four. That is not the case in the secondary right now because there is one position that's just a little question mark there in the back
last
end.
line of defense.
Exactly. If you play a single high safety and your single high safety is not determined yet halfway through training camp,
then Nico Collins burns you.
See you later.
In the last game of the season.
So like, I think that it's fine to have competition, Chap, and it's good to have competition, like coaches will always tell you, but you'd rather have the competition be decided, I think, halfway through training camp, wouldn't you?
You'd like to have a better idea going into training camp, and at this point knowing, I mean, with Ronnie Harrison Jr. getting some good push there.
A guy who really hadn't played free safety since Andrew Luck was taking the Colts to the AFC Championship.
And he was sort of a linebacker for you last year.
Yeah.
So and we spend so much time in the press room talking because that's what we do. I don't understand the reluctance, not the reluctance, they haven't done it, to sign a veteran safety. There are 2 or 3 out there who have, I realize they're 30, 31, whatever it is, but everyone internally believes this is a playoff team. It should compete for the division, which we'll get a good idea in the opener on where they stack up with Houston. And to leave yourself so vulnerable at safety, because it's going to cost you 1 year and, gosh, $3 million. You're not going to – these guys aren't getting big money. So I don't understand why they haven't done that. Normally you want guys who have the chance to be players for you. They're here because it gives them 2 or 3 weeks to kind of, get caught up with things. It's baffling to me. What I would argue at corner, but I would argue much harder for safety.
And Rodney Harrison's competing along with Rodney Thomas and Nick Cross, kind of the trio there.
But you should know by now.
Right. You would think so. You would hope so. And the Colts, we've said this before, they want it to be Nick Cross because he's the guy that they traded up to get a couple years ago in the draft. He's going into his 3rd year. But he started, I was talking with Nate Atkins of the Star just on the sideline today, along with a couple other people. But he made the observation that Nick Cross has now started 2 of the last 32 games. I think he started early in his career, like the first 2 games of his career, and then he started 2 of the last 32. That's it. That's as much as he's really been on the field. And he did so because Rodney Thomas was just struggling at the end of this past season.
They had to quit playing Rodney Thomas.
Right. They were forced to. It's not like Nick Cross was doing anything every week in practice like, oh, we need to get him on the field. That's not what was happening. It was we need somebody else on the field in the back end of the secondary to see what we can do.
I don't get it. Again, it's not like you're going to have to give a guy big.
Even if you give someone 1 year $10 million. I mean, you have 20, I think, right now.
But it won't take that. But no, you're right. I mean, I would just hate to be sitting here in December and everything else works. Everything else, the pass rush is there, and the offense is scoring 27 a game. Yet you've had – because when the free safety botches things, it's a big play. Because and we saw it 2 or 3 times, maybe more last year, is where the corner thought he had help. The Houston game, the corner thought he had help on the first play of the game. He didn't.
Nope.
And you got the receiver running wide open, and – you had that happen a couple of times, and it just cripples you.
Just brutal. So to be determined still at the back end of the secondary. At the front end.
Do you think they add somebody?
At this point, no.
Barring injury.
At this point, no. I really don't.
I agree, and I don't understand.
Because we're too far into camp right now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, since it's clear that they're going to use Ronnie Harrison Jr. at safety, I think they've decided that, hey, the veteran safety that we're going to bring in is already on the roster, and it's Ronnie Harrison. And
he hasn't played this position since 2012.
They put him at linebacker last year because they needed to use him for some injury stuff. He did some good stuff at linebacker. Then they had Blackman get hurt, so they used Harrison again, but they used him in the secondary, and they thought, well, he wasn't too bad. Maybe I don't understand it.
And here's the thing about Ronnie, who I really like, by the way, the couple times I've talked to him.
It's not that he's a bad player.
And he's a Tallahassee kid. Yes, let's go Florida High. Like last year, the Colts got him off the street because no one else in the league wanted him. That's the thing. The Colts signed him to play linebacker, a position that he didn't even play. So no one in the league wanted him to be in the secondary. The Colts said, hey, why don't you come here and try out to be a linebacker and see how it works for you. And it wasn't that bad. And now he's back for another year. So I don't intend to disparage him with this. I tend to just show the reality of the situation, that there's a lot of teams out there that did not want Ronnie Harrison, and all of a sudden you're throwing him into a starting role instead of a backup role or some kind of other role. You're doing what every other team in the league said, nah, we're good.
Well, even you said, nah, we're good until you reach the more desperate periods. So,
right.
And again, generally at this time of year, guys you sign are guys that are out there for a reason. They're either too old, they're too hurt, they're not good enough. There's 2 or 3 safeties that are players.
Right.
And they were cut for cap purposes. And we're not talking a big investment, 2 or 3 years. No, we're talking the 1 year, Rodney McLeod.
Yep.
The Mike Mitchells. That's what you want. And these guys are better than that, but they just haven't done that yet. And again, if they haven't done it yet, I don't know why barring injury, I'm not sure why you would.
And maybe that's another strange dynamic of it, because here in Indianapolis with the Colts, they've made this move before. Like, we're used to seeing them go out and signing Rodney McLeod.
Well, I'll go back to Mike Adams.
And then he becomes a 2-time Pro Bowler for them here. Like, exactly. Like, they've made these moves in the back end before, and this year they're just not doing it. So
it's a stubbornness that I understand they really want to rely on their own, develop their own. But there are times that an outside help, who have they signed from the outside this year? Nobody, have they? I mean,
Flacco and Raekwon Davis.
Yeah, those are the 2.
So it's strange, and they've got their reasons, and they don't share their reasons other than we like what we've got, but it's just strange.
Some notes on the rookies. Laiatu Latu has had a pretty good camp, I think, so far in his limited time that we've seen him out there. When he put on the pads, got some praise from left tackle Bernard Ryman. Then it seemed like some genuine praise from them as well. And he looks like, I've seen him a little bit in one-on-one, and he's looked pretty good out there. It'll be interesting to see exactly what his role is going to be early, but I'm very interested to see him on the field, actually in an NFL game going after the quarterback.
They were talking that during off-season work and all this, when there's no pads, that you really see the speed, the get off, the getting off blocks with his hands. He's great using his hands, but it's different when the pads go on. And that's what Ballard and Gus Bradley said, and I haven't seen a drop-off. I just haven't. And Kevin Bowen, who does a really good morning show, he was talking that he can't remember seeing this out of a rookie pass rusher in a long time. Quiddy's a fine player, but I've not really seen a rookie do this. And we talked a lot to yesterday, and you stand next to him, and he's just got a different body weight and a frame. He looks like a little bigger Kylan Granson. He's not. He just doesn't have. He's not thick. He's not like Quiddy and thick and all this. But if he can, what's the over under on his sacks this year? 10, 9.
It's got to be worse than that. It's got to be lower than that, I imagine, for a rookie that's part-time.
I think somebody said only like 5 rookies have had 10 sacks over the last whatever it is. But I think this guy's got a chance. They're going to put him in advantageous positions. If people single block DeForest Buckner, he's going to have a year. But they won't. So they're going to put this kid in positions to maximize what he does, and it's going to be really fun to watch. I mentioned, too, that with Dwight Freeney, that he didn't start until his 8th or 9th season game in 2002, and it was at Philly, and he just mauled Donovan McNabb. And he would have been Rookie of the Year had it not been for Julius Peppers.
Right.
So I think ideally they won't. He may not be out there he won't come out of the tunnel for introductions. They need to have this kid be sort of the guy that makes those splash plays that you really notice and then you remember coming out of the game.
Adonai Mitchell's been splitting first-team reps with Alec Pierce on the other side of the ball. Reggie Wayne called him an alpha. Wants guys like that in the receiver room, and we talked a little bit about AD earlier. I don't think we need to get too much further into him. Jalen Carlisle is another rookie who's made a couple of nice plays. Like, he's made a couple of those splash plays with interceptions, tipped balls. He's not seeing a lot of time with the ones, mind you, but still doing that against Joe Flacco is nothing to sneeze at either. So a guy has this big safety body who's now playing linebacker, who looks more like a linebacker completely than a safety to me when he's
kind of not like
there.
Cato June, who was a safety that played linebacker. Cato was still undersized. This guy's bigger.
Yeah, he definitely is. Like, he's a good sized dude.
He will be your third linebacker.
I think so too. Yeah, and if that's the battle between him, Saguna Luby. Then maybe Alubi starts the season, but I think Carlisle is going to be.
But how often do they have three linebackers?
Yeah, they don't use that alignment much anymore.
Like very, very, very rarely. We've talked a little bit about the new kickoff rule. I think we really need to see it for us to actually like break it down a little bit more. But that
can't really show the graphic here of how they line up and all that stuff. You need to see it.
Yeah.
Maybe we make too much out of it, but when the league throws something. Such a big curve at you, you got to see it in action.
They're really changing football in a way, like not offense and defense, but special teams is important too. They're changing a very significant play to football.
Well, they want to try to limit the injuries.
Right.
That's when you have the major injuries. We're on kickoffs, so a league that's really in tune with player safety is going to add an 18th game. So take of that what you mean, what they will.
And I'm just going to say, for the Colts, like when the Colts line up for kickoffs, Rigoberto Sanchez just boots it in the back of the end zone every time. So it's like either just start the ball on the 25, or you're going to have to do something to change it if you want to add some excitement to this without having it be
if
a
you kick out of the end zone, is it the 25 or is it used to be the?
I think it's the 30 if it goes out of the end zone.
I think so.
The end zone, yeah.
I understand they want to reintroduce kickoffs, but if I'm a team that I'm not really up, I don't feel good about it. Give them the ball at the 30.
One of the more intriguing developments of this past week came from the final episode of HBO's Hard Knocks show, the offseason following of the New York Giants. And we got to go inside the draft room with the Giants and their GM, Joe Schoen. And as they're on the clock with the 6th overall pick, Joe takes a call from one Christopher Ballard, general manager of the Indianapolis Colts. The offer for the 6th overall pick is what is kind of made known to us now. The Colts offered for the 6th overall pick, their 15th pick, their 46th pick, which is in the second round, and their second round pick from next year. So 2 second rounders basically to increase yourself 9 spots. I don't know if they did anything with editing, but in the show, as soon as the GM hung up the phone, he said, "That's too far back. I'm not going."
Which was always the problem with the Colts being at 15.
And that's what Ballard told us after the draft, which was completely correct. That going down to 15 was too far. There's a lot of, I think we could go for an entire hour on this, but we'll touch it before we wrap up here. I thought my first reaction was that 2 seconds is just not enough to move into that high if you're down at 15. To be able to make that jump. I don't see that happening too often. But then, I looked into it a little bit more, and I did this on Twitter last night.
Was that Julio Jones you looked at?
Yes. So if you follow me on Twitter, at DaveG_sports, the Julio Jones trade, the Falcons jumped up for Julio, which was the 6th overall pick, again, but they were all the way down at 27. So they were way down the first round.
That's a long way to go.
Oh, man.
So they traded their first round for the following year, plus 2 4th-round picks, and maybe another pick as well.
I think you put another pick in there.
Yeah, I think there was a 2nd or a 3rd-round pick. I think it was a 2nd-round pick. So they traded their first-round pick they had, their 2nd-round pick, their 4th-round pick, and their 1st and their 4th from next year to move up from 27th to 6th. That's a massive deal, and you had to get up there from 27. Now, just this past year, the Lions traded the 6th overall pick. I forget who they traded it to, but they traded that number pick, the 6th overall pick, plus 1 in the 3rd round, and the team that they were trading with traded a 1st, a 2nd, and a 5th or something like that. So from Ballard's perspective, 2 seconds is very much it's not lowballing anyone by any stretch of the imagination. It's a reasonable offer, but it just depends on who is on your board and what you want. And do you want a plethora of young talent, or do you want to get one dynamic player who is on the board right here? Julio Jones was an incredible college player.
He will be in the Hall of Fame.
Yes. Malik Neighbors was an incredible college player. He's a guy that can change the trajectory of your offense. So from the Giants' perspective, Like they needed something big to move down. And so I understand, what I tweeted was, I understand Chris trying to move up, but I also understand the Giants saying, that was my reaction from the whole thing. And you could see that Ballard tried to move up, but it just wasn't enough to get the job done at the end of the day.
But the ripple effects would be incredible, because let's say you do that. I was told maybe they move up for
Neighbors?
No, the other guy, Rome Odunze. Maybe he's the one they remove. Either way, you get him, then you don't get Latu, you don't get Mitchell, and they also got 2 or 3 other players from that because they traded back to get some fifths.
Right. Yeah, there were 5 players that would have not been in this draft class.
And players who are going to play. I think Simpson was one of them,
Gould was one of them,
and these guys are going to play.
Mike Abraham, and then of course the 6th round or the second round pick for next year.
Right, which I don't get too hung up on next year's draft. Who knows?
I don't either.
Who knows? But it shows you, I think, that the commitment of the Colts and Ballard to get a top-tier potential receiver, they were not moving up for Brock Bowers.
No,
trust me.
I don't think so either.
No.
But if you can get that guy and pair him with your young quarterback, it's pretty enticing, and it could tell you that maybe from their early projections they don't have a receiver on the board next year with that level of either one of those neighbors or Odunze.
Odunze, yes.
I don't know. I just need to spell him right. So, but it's also, isn't that the boldest move that he has tried to make? Is this better? Is this bigger than giving up a 1 for Buck? Or not?
That's a good question, because this one, well,
I think it is, and
because you're giving up 2 second rounds.
Don't know how these guys are going to play.
Right.
True.
Whereas Buck's a known quantity. This guy's like a Pro Bowl.
I would do the Buck trade every time.
Every year.
Every year. And the position matters, yes, but if I can get an established, Buck had played 3 years, 4. He played 3 years because he was going to go into his contract year.
Right.
So I would do that, and Buck was that almost all-pro at his position then. I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But this is still a little bit of the unknown, but it shows you how, because, again, they've not really moved up. They've really not done the receiver thing. Yeah, yes, second-round picks, which they've done. But
not in the first round.
Let's mention one more time. They moved back twice to get Mitchell.
Yeah. So
it just shows you how he looked at if you can get that Marvin Harrison type player. Marvin was middle of the first round, or Reggie Wayne, who was 30th or 31st.
Down there near the end of the first round.
So, but I think it just showed you, and we may see over the next 10 years, the quality of those top 2 or 3 or 4 receivers. And he was committed to get one. But as he said, it takes 2 to make a deal.
Right. Now, do you think, Chap, that Chris Ballard likes this being released?
We talked about that. If you tell anybody a secret, it's no longer a secret.
Right.
I don't know. It's a good question on what his commitment was. Now, he told us at the time that they had serious discussions, but he didn't say what it was.
Right. He didn't say, "Oh, we offered 2 2s in our 15 to go up to 6." And
right.
No.
I don't think would he rather it's not out there? Maybe, but so what? It's out there. I think in one level it adds texture to what those serious discussions were. Also, that was pretty serious. For him to give up those type of draft picks is pretty serious because he doesn't do that. Mm-hmm. So, but give or take, he probably not, but I don't think he's kicking the wall because it got out.
No, I don't think so either. I think both teams are fine with it. That's why when you ask, "Oh, can Hard Knocks do this?" I can't believe they showed this. I think that both teams are fine with it because for the Giants, it shows that they liked Neighbors. It shows how much they like him.
Well, they've got editorial content. They could have eliminated that section from the product.
Right, because they have ultimate say.
Right.
And for the Colts, for Chris Ballard, it shows he has a reputation for being stingy. And
especially at the position.
Justified or not.
Yeah, especially wide receiver.
Exactly. He has a reputation for not going for it, for not taking the shot. Well, he took a shot, and it's a reasonable shot to take. Right. He's not going to mortgage the future for this pick because that's just not in his DNA. He could
have called back and said, "Okay, we'll give you next year's number 1," which he would never do.
Right.
But he could have, but he took a swing.
Right, and it goes to this offseason too, how like he took swings with Daniil Hunter. Like that was a swing that we know he took, and it just didn't pan out. So you bring back all your guys from last year, and then the narrative is, oh, Chris Ballard doesn't try.
He didn't do anything.
Exactly.
Well, yes, he did.
He did quite a bit. Yeah, there's a line that you don't go past. And for every man, for every woman, for every general manager, there has to be that line. He has a line he doesn't go past, and it's a reasonable line from from what has come out in these situations.
He's only willing to mortgage so much of the future, and I think that's fine,
which is reasonable. Completely
If
reasonable.
he had never made the phone call, then I'd feel way different about this, and then it also goes to show just how much premium, again, we've said it many times, how much premium offensive talent was in this draft, and why those first 14 players, the 6 quarterbacks helped, of course, but why all those 14 players before they got to the Colts were offensive guys.
What do you mean? They were trading up to 6 to try to make sure they got Laiatu Latu there? They're their first defensive guy on the board?
That would have caused a stir. I would still love to know Ballard's top 15 on the board. Mm-hmm. Where did he have Latu?
Right.
And how did he have, quarterbacks, I don't care. But the receivers and maybe some of the other pass rushers. But, the fact that they picked the best defensive player on their board. It wasn't a corner.
Nope.
And God knows they need corner help.
They certainly do.
Although, give me one or the other, and I'll take a pass rusher every day.
And also, we learned from that Roku documentary a few weeks ago that the Colts had a chance to trade down in that draft from the Rams to pick up some additional picks. I didn't think it was a great offer.
Where were the Rams at?
19, I think.
So it wasn't too far to go down.
It wasn't too far, but I still don't think they thought that Latu would necessarily be there.
Yeah, but then you have to have plan B as a pass rusher or a corner. Maybe that would have been a corner.
Yeah,
but
I think that shows you that they had Latu relatively high.
This is our guy.
Correct.
This is the guy. We're going to stay. The fact that somebody dangled extra draft picks in front of Chris Ballard to move down just a few spots, really, and he said, you know what, we're going to stay here and take our guy, tells you how much the Colts valued Laiatu Latu when they were unable to draft up.
They had to be giddy with every pick of an offensive player in that draft. Had to be.
Absolutely, because they got to look at their defensive board and go, our top guy's still available. Let's get him.
I'd like to know how high they had him ranked is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And you might say it was a luxury pick at the time, but now without Ebukam, like we said earlier, he's going to see some time. He's going to see some snaps. He's going to get the opportunity.
You're adding a pass rusher to your strongest unit.
Yeah.
Well, now all of a sudden you lose your
top pass rusher, quote unquote, from a year ago.
If you would list your top 10 Colts, Ebukam's not on there.
Probably not.
But what he can do for your defense makes him such a not indispensable player, but valuable player, because pass rushers do things in small quantities that turn games.
And you knock on wood that nothing like that happens for the rest of the camp, but that's why you listen to us on the Colts Blue Zone podcast. It's why you read Fox59.com, CBS4Indy.com. You see what Mike Chappell's writing every day to see exactly what's going down. We do appreciate you listening. Congratulations to Syracuse and Indianapolis legend Dwight Freeney for making the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We'll listen to that this weekend.
He didn't make it because he went to Syracuse. You realize that, don't you?
That's to be debated. Maybe we'll have another podcast. Yeah, exactly.
That's why Marvin Harrison's not in the Hall of Fame because he went to Syracuse.
There's the third thing that's special about Dwight is that he's got the Syracuse national media contingent behind him, because that's a real thing.
If you get me a Syracuse jersey, I'll wear it at induction ceremonies for both of them.
Oh, man, I'd have one at home.
I need double X.
I was about to say, my jersey would not fit you, however. Hey, thanks for listening to the Colts Blue Zone podcast. For Chap and Matt, I'm Dave. We'll see you next week.